All things health and fitness, this is the Army Gymnastics Podcast.
The Army Gymnastics Podcast.
Discover a fitter, healthier you at armygymnastics.com.
Welcome, deep divers, to another journey into, well, the really intricate landscape of human health and well-being. There's this fundamental human need, isn't there? It's woven right into the fabric of who we are, this profound desire for connection. Just think about, the simple joy of shared laughter, or that quiet comfort you find in intimate conversations with someone you really trust, or even just that deep, reassuring feeling of truly belonging. These aren't just like pleasant extras. They're absolutely vital to our emotional, our psychological health. They nourish us, connect us, help us navigate life, really. But what if these connections, these kind of lifelines in our social world, what if they were slowly, subtly eroded by something invisible? What if something you might brush off as just a minor inconvenience was actually chipping away at your ability to engage, impacting not just your social life, but something much deeper, your cognitive well-being, your memory, your ability to think clearly? And this isn't just about getting older. It's really a universal challenge, touching on how our senses shape our reality, our world, and even our future.
So today we're embarking on a deep dive into a critically important and I think often overlooked interconnected triad. We're talking hearing loss, loneliness, and their surprising, quite profound link to brain health decline. Our mission, as always, is to go beyond the surface level. We've got a stack of recent cutting-edge research, comprehensive reviews. We're here to distill the most vital insights, basically, and equip you with knowledge. Practical, actionable knowledge to protect your cognitive future. Our sources for this are, well, pretty extensive. Major European studies, crucial U.S. national health data from places like the NIH. We've got systematic reviews from PMC, that's the PubMed Central Archive, a huge repository of biomedical literature, and insights from expert bodies like the World Health Organization. It's a real wealth of scientific evidence, and we're excited to unpack it with you.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how these issues that seem so distinct, your physical ability to hear and that deeply personal need for social connection, how they're so intimately, intricately intertwined with something as fundamental as our memory, our overall brain health. It's not just a correlation we're seeing, it's a dynamic interplay. It can genuinely speed up or slow down cognitive decline. And the urgency of this topic, frankly, it really can't be overstated. We're not just talking about the inconvenience of, say, straining to hear in a noisy room or feeling a bit sad sometimes. No, we are talking about identifying and, crucially, addressing potentially modifiable risk factors for conditions as serious as dementia. And our sources show these issues affect a significant and actually growing part of the global population. Understanding these links gives us a really powerful lever for prevention.
Okay, so let's unpack that first piece, hearing loss. Many of us know someone, right? Someone who struggles with their hearing. Maybe we even experience it ourselves a bit. But do we really grasp its widespread impact on a global scale? And what it truly means beyond just, turning the TV up. The numbers from the World Health Organization are pretty startling. They really paint a picture of this silent but pervasive global challenge. Nearly 2.5 billion people are projected to have some form of hearing loss or impairment by 2050. That's enormous. Roughly 1 in 4 people on the planet. And if you narrow that focus to older adults, say people over 60, the prevalence is even starker. More than 25% of them are already living with what's considered a disabling hearing impairment. And this is way more than just missing a word here and there. It's about a fundamental shift in how your brain actually engages with the world around you. It's a profound challenge that goes way beyond just hearing sounds. It digs right into the core of how our brains process information, prioritize it, and ultimately preserve it.
Right. Building on that, let's think about what's actually happening inside your brain when hearing isn't optimal. Think of your brain like a super sophisticated computer, incredibly powerful, but it has finite processing power, limited resources. Now, imagine trying to run, several really demanding programs all at once on that computer. High-res video editing, maybe 3D rendering. This is kind of analogous to what we call the cognitive load theory. It's something heavily emphasized in our sources, like Unity Physio. Your brain has a limited capacity for processing information, for directing its attention. So when hearing declines, a disproportionately large chunk of those precious neural resources gets diverted. Instead of just effortlessly interpreting sounds and focusing on higher level thought, your brain is forced to work overtime. It's desperately trying to just decipher the auditory input, especially speech. Just making sense of it becomes a huge task. And to put a number on this kind of invisible internal struggle, a 2022 study in the journal Neurology had a really eye-opening finding. Participants with even mild hearing loss were found to use a staggering 97% more brain effort just for speech comprehension. 97%. Think about that. Almost double the energy your brain should be using just to understand what someone's saying. And this leaves minimal cognitive reserve for what we call higher level functions, the really crucial stuff. Things like forming new memories, essential for learning, right? Critical thinking, analyzing information, making decisions, problem solving, even just maintaining attention in a dynamic environment. All of that suffers. The consequence of this chronic mental overexertion, it leads to this pervasive, often debilitating mental exhaustion. Daily interactions, things that should be easy, enjoyable, they become taxing, draining. You end up with this profound fatigue that can really impact everything.
Wow, 97% more effort. That's huge. And beyond just the effort, what about the actual physical structure of the brain? Are there measurable changes happening if hearing loss goes untreated? Because this is where it gets really compelling, maybe even a bit alarming. It's not just about the effort the brain makes. There are actual physical alterations happening inside the brain itself. Advanced imaging, things like MRI, let researchers see these structural changes with incredible detail. For example, a landmark study back in 2014 in NeuroImage showed something quite striking. Hearing-impaired adults experienced, on average, about 1 cubic centimeter more annual brain shrinkage, what scientists call gray matter atrophy, compared to people with normal hearing. And this shrinkage wasn't just anywhere. It was particularly noticeable in the auditory regions of the brain. Makes sense. But here's the crucial part, connecting the dots here. These same auditory regions overlap significantly with brain centers vital for memory. So that suggests a direct physical link, a pathway, between untreated hearing loss and cognitive decline. And it doesn't stop there. Research from Johns Hopkins in 2021 shed more light on this. They found a 30% faster deterioration in the delicate white matter pathways of the auditory nerve in people who didn't use hearing aids compared to those who did. White matter, just for context, is like the brain's internal cabling system, right? The superhighways connecting different regions, making sure signals travel fast and efficiently.
Exactly.
When that critical cabling starts to degrade, communication within the brain slows down. It gets less effective, like a really bad internet connection. And what our sources stress again and again is that these structural changes, they don't just happen alongside cognitive decline, they actually precede it. They're considered strong predictors of future cognitive problems, a tangible physical sign of the cost of untreated hearing loss.
Which leads us, naturally, to a really critical question. Is hearing loss just fate? Something we accept as part of aging? Or is it something we can actively tackle to protect our brains, our cognitive future? And the research is giving a pretty powerful, unequivocal answer. It's something we absolutely can and should address proactively. Think about that pivotal 2017 report in The Lancet, a huge medical journal. It identified hearing loss as the single largest potentially modifiable risk factor for dementia. That's a massive statement. It points to a huge opportunity for intervention. They gave it a population attributable fraction of 9%. What does that mean, practically? It suggests that if we could somehow eliminate hearing loss across the whole population, we could potentially prevent 9% of all dementia cases. It really highlights the sheer scale of impact this one factor has. So the implication is profound, really. Addressing hearing loss isn't just about, hearing conversations better or enjoying music more. Those are important, but it's a key proactive strategy for cognitive longevity. It positions hearing care not just as a quality of life thing, but as a critical piece of preventative brain health. By improving that auditory input, we lessen that cognitive load we talked about.
Right.
We free up valuable brain resources. And that, in turn, can potentially slow down, maybe even prevent those physical and functional changes linked to cognitive decline. It means a relatively simple step. Getting a hearing check and then maybe getting help if you need it could be one of the most impactful things you can do right now for your brain's long-term future. Yeah. It's about taking control of a risk factor you can actually modify.
Okay, so that's hearing loss. Now let's move to the second key element in this triad, loneliness. Often we use terms like loneliness and social isolation almost interchangeably, don't we, in everyday chat. But our sources, especially that systematic review on PMC, they make a really crucial distinction. Understanding this difference is key. Social isolation, for instance, that's an objective measure. It's quantifiable. It's about the actual size of your social network, the number of contacts you have, how often you actually engage with them. Think of it like a checklist. How many people do you see? How often? What's the sheer quantity? It's a factual assessment of your external social world. Loneliness, though, that's subjective. It's internal. It's not about the numbers on a checklist. It's about your perceived gap between the social relationships you want and the ones you actually have. It's an emotional state, a feeling. And it can happen regardless of how many people are technically around you. To illustrate that difference, imagine someone with, say, thousands of followers online, goes to lots of parties, always surrounded by people, objectively not isolated at all.
But they might still feel profoundly lonely if those interactions lack depth or meaning to them.
Right. Quality versus quantity.
Exactly. And conversely, you could have someone who lives quietly, maybe has just a couple of very close friends. Objectively, maybe they fit the definition of socially isolated by some measures.
Yeah.
But they might never feel lonely because those few relationships are deeply fulfilling. They have all the connection they desire. This distinction is so important because tackling the feeling of loneliness often needs different strategies than just trying to, get someone to join more clubs.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the scale of this loneliness issue, this epidemic as it's being called, is truly staggering. It's far from just an individual problem. It's a widespread, growing public health concern. Prevalence estimates for loneliness in older adults, well, they range quite widely, cited in the PMC review from maybe 2% up to 40%. Depends how you measure it, define it. But it shows how pervasive it is. Social isolation, while different, is also common around 24% of older adults. These aren't small numbers. We're talking tens of millions of people feeling a profound lack of the connection that truly nourishes them. And the gravity of the situation was really hammered home last year, 2023. The U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, released a major report. He explicitly called loneliness and social isolation an epidemic in America, a significant public health crisis, as the FSU College of Medicine notes. And that's not just dramatic language. It's recognizing the severe, widespread impact these conditions have on health, physical and mental, rivaling the risks we associate with things like smoking or obesity. The report and the research around it underscores that loneliness and isolation aren't just unpleasant feelings. They are critical risk factors with serious, tangible, measurable consequences for health, including, crucially for us today, cognitive function and the very structure of our brains.
So what does this actually mean for our brains? How does loneliness leave its mark? It turns out it's not just a fleeting sadness. Our sources show it's a profound biological stressor. It leaves real, measurable, and frankly, chilling scars on our neurology. A silent brain killer is how some describe it. Imagine your brain is like an intricate garden. When you're connected, engaged, it's like the garden's well-tended, thriving, renewing itself. But chronic loneliness, it's like a harsh, invisible drought that leaves these scars. Consider this finding. It's really quite chilling. A 2020 study in Nature found lonely adults had a 7 to 10% smaller hippocampal volume after just 18 months. The hippocampus, that's the brain's memory hub, right? Vital for forming new memories, spatial navigation.
Absolutely central.
It's this small seahorse-shaped bit deep in the temporal lobe. Acts like the brain's initial filing clerk for new experiences, new information. It takes short-term memories and helps consolidate them into long-term ones, remembering where you parked, what you ate, details of a conversation. And it's crucial for knowing where you are, how to get around, spatial stuff. When this area shrinks, it directly impacts your ability to form new memories, navigate daily life. Your brain is literally shrinking due to a perceived lack of connection. That's a stark biological reality. And it gets even more concerning. Research from the University of Chicago 2023 showed loneliness actually increases amyloid plaques by 32%. Amyloid plaques, those are the abnormal protein clumps in the brain, a key hallmark of Alzheimer's disease.
Right, a major biomarker.
So a 32% increase, to put that in perspective, that's comparable to the risk you see with certain genetic predispositions for Alzheimer's. That's how profound loneliness can be for brain health. The connection seems to be rooted in the body's stress response. Chronic loneliness keeps you stuck in that fight or flight mode. Constantly elevated cortisol, the main stress hormone, over time, that damages neurons through chronic inflammation. It also slows down neurogenesis, that's the brain creating new brain cells, especially in memory areas. So it's damaging existing cells and stopping new ones from forming properly, and the functional consequences, equally stark. A sobering 2021 study in JAMA Psychiatry found lonely adults showed cognitive decline 3 times faster than socially connected peers. 3 times faster. That's a significant acceleration toward impaired thinking, memory, reasoning, a rapid slide. And just to really drive home the gravity of this silent brain killer idea that meta-analysis cited in the Loneliness Interventions Review, It notes that stronger social relationships are linked to a 50% increased likelihood of survival.
50%.
Yeah, an effect size comparable to the benefit of not smoking or not abusing alcohol. Conversely, loneliness itself is linked to a 29% higher risk of heart disease, 32% higher risk of stroke. And most relevant here, a staggering 50% increased risk of dementia. These aren't just abstract stats. They represent a major preventable threat to our health, our longevity, or cognitive future. It shows just how detrimental the absence of real connection can be.
And what's really fascinating, or perhaps disturbing, is how hearing loss and loneliness don't just operate in parallel. They don't just happen to affect the same person sometimes. Our sources, Unity Physio for example, show they actively feed into each other. They create this dangerous self-reinforcing feedback loop, a vicious cycle that can dramatically impact cognitive health and speed up decline. Let's maybe trace that progression step by step to see how it unfolds. Okay, so it often starts with stage 1. Hearing difficulty leads to social withdrawal. When someone starts having trouble hearing, even if it's mild at first, conversations just become hard work. Think about the constant strain of trying to figure out muffled words, the frustration of always asking what, the embarrassment of maybe responding inappropriately because you misheard.
Yeah, that must be exhausting.
It is. It makes social situations taxing. So there's this natural, understandable, but ultimately damaging tendency to pull back. People might start skipping noisy parties where conversation's impossible, avoiding phone calls because it's too difficult, gradually disengaging from relationships. The energy needed just doesn't feel worth it, and that fear of misunderstanding becomes this powerful, isolating barrier. Okay, so that withdrawal then sets the stage for stage 2. Social isolation fosters brain changes and loneliness. As people cut back on social engagement, whether it's an objective drop in contacts or just that subjective feeling of disconnect, even if people are around it, it creates this fertile ground for loneliness to really take root. And as we just discussed, loneliness isn't just a feeling. It triggers measurable physical and neurological damage in the brain. That hippocampus shrinking, amyloid plaques building up.
Yeah.
The brain gets bathed in stress hormones like cortisol, damaging neurons, slowing down the growth of new brain cells. This is the phase where the emotional pain of loneliness starts leaving actual physical marks on the brain. Which brings us to stage 3, resulting cognitive decline reinforcing withdrawal. The brain changes caused by that chronic loneliness, compounded by the cognitive load from the hearing problems that haven't been addressed, they start showing up as real cognitive decline. Memory gets worse, processing speed slows down, executive functions like planning and decision-making get harder, and this cognitive impairment then makes communication even more difficult. Ah, so it feeds back into itself.
Exactly. It becomes harder to follow conversations, remember names or details, initiate social interactions,
Yeah.
which reinforces the very withdrawal that started the whole cycle. The person becomes even more isolated, loneliness deepens, and the cycle spirals downward, accelerating cognitive decline. And our sources mention a grim breaking point. Research from Oxford in 2022, cited by Unity Physio, suggests after maybe 7 to 10 years, this cycle can become neurologically entrenched, meaning the brain changes are much harder to reverse. It really underscores why early identification and intervention are so critical to break this loop. Okay, so we've got this theoretical cycle, but what about big definitive research? The kind that really nails down this link between hearing loss, loneliness, and cognitive decline in large populations. Well, a massive European study published just very recently, July 18th, 2025, in Communication Psychology, really puts a powerful spotlight on this. This wasn't some small study. Researchers at the University of Geneva analyzed data from a huge sample, 33,000 older adults across Europe. Drawn from the SHARE study, that's a long-term survey looking at health, economics, social networks in Europeans over 50. That kind of scale gives the findings real weight. And the key finding is incredibly powerful and quite nuanced. It found that hearing loss accelerates cognitive decline, particularly among individuals who feel lonely. And here's the kicker, regardless of whether they are objectively socially isolated or not.
That's fascinating. So it's the feeling.
Exactly. It's not just about how many people are physically around you. It's about how you feel about your connections, or the lack of them. This study looked at different groups, people who were isolated and felt lonely, people who were not isolated but still felt lonely, and people who were isolated but didn't feel lonely. The crucial insight was for that group who weren't objectively isolated but felt lonely. Hearing loss dramatically worsened their cognitive decline. The researchers concluded it's the feeling of loneliness combined with the sensory barrier of hearing loss that acts as this explosive cocktail for accelerated memory decline. This is groundbreaking stuff, really supporting the idea that we need to address both the hearing issue and the subjective feeling of loneliness to protect cognitive health.
That raises an important question, though, about individual differences. Do these impacts affect everyone the same way? What about, say, gender differences? Our systematic review from PMC does touch on this, revealing some interesting potential differences between men and women. Several studies in that review found a stronger association between hearing loss and feelings of loneliness, and also objective social isolation among women compared to men. It suggests that while both are affected, the pathways or maybe the intensity of the impact might vary. Why might that be? Well, there are a few potential explanations. One theory, drawing on work by Maltz and Borker back in '82, suggests women might traditionally rely more heavily on verbal communication for building and maintaining social bonds.
Okay, that makes sense.
If that's the case, then hearing decline would hit harder at their primary way of connecting, leading to maybe more pronounced feelings of isolation or loneliness compared to men, who might connect through different activities, perhaps. Another possibility is simpler. Maybe women are just more likely, perhaps culturally, to acknowledge and report feeling lonely or feeling less supported than men are. Societal norms around emotional expression could play a role. But regardless of the exact reason, these findings suggest we might need tailored interventions. The experience isn't uniform, and gender-specific approaches might be more effective. It just highlights the complexity, really.
Okay, and zooming out again, beyond the individual impact, these issues, loneliness, social isolation, especially linked with hearing loss, they carry significant broader costs, don't they? Societal financial costs that affect everyone. That PMC review hammers this home. These aren't just personal tragedies, they're major public health and economic issues. Loneliness is directly linked to higher healthcare use. Lonely individuals tend to seek medical care more often, end up in hospital more, visit ERs more, all driving up costs for the whole system. But the numbers get even more specific and, frankly, staggering. Lack of social contact among older adults specifically is associated with an estimated $6.7 billion in additional federal Medicare spending every single year in the U.S.
Billion, with a B.
It's exactly. Billions of taxpayer dollars annually, directly tied to the consequences of social isolation and loneliness in older people. This isn't just an abstract number. It's a drain on resources that could go elsewhere: research, prevention for other diseases. What this really emphasizes, and what our deep dive keeps showing, is that identifying and actively addressing these modifiable risk factors hearing loss, loneliness isn't just about individual well-being. It's a vital strategy for responsible public health management, for optimizing healthcare, for long-term economic stability. Investing in solutions here isn't just compassionate, it's fiscally smart. It's an investment in the health of society.
But the good news, and this is really a critical takeaway from all our sources, is that these are largely modifiable factors. We have clear, actionable pathways for intervention. We're not powerless here. Significant progress can be made. And one of the most significant areas is hearing rehabilitation. Let's start with modern hearing aids. The NIH-funded ACHIEVE trial, that stands for Aging and Cognitive Health Evaluation in Elders, published in The Lancet July 17, 2023. This was huge. A large, randomized controlled trial giving definitive evidence. It found hearing aids reduced the rate of cognitive decline in older adults already at high risk for dementia by almost 50% over 3 years.
Wow, 50% reduction in decline rate.
Exactly, almost half. This is powerful, concrete proof. Better hearing translates directly into fuller lives and significantly protected brains. It's an intervention that genuinely slows cognitive decline. Now, for people who can't benefit from traditional hearing aids, cochlear implants are playing an increasingly vital role. Sources like Science Daily, Stanford Medicine, Unity Physio all highlight how these implants can restore significant auditory input, basically bypassing the damaged parts of the ear. And newer designs, soft, flexible implants, are showing real promise, less invasive, potentially better outcomes. Beyond the devices themselves, assistive technology is also making a massive difference, reducing that cognitive load, making communication easier. Think about speech-to-text apps like Ava, which our sources mentioned.
Oh, yeah, those are amazing.
They really are. They transcribe speech into text in real time, reduces the strain, makes interactions less exhausting, opens up conversations that might otherwise be missed entirely. And then there's something often overlooked but really powerful: hearing loss support groups. HealthyHearing.com points out these groups provide a crucial safe space, shared experiences. This directly tackles the isolation that so often comes with hearing loss. It offers emotional support, a sense of community. People can share tips, discuss challenges, learn from each other. They foster friendships, boost confidence in social settings. They offer peer support, info on new tech, communication strategies, even advocacy work. It's this holistic approach combining technology with social support that's proving truly transformative, addressing both the physical hearing barrier and the social emotional side.
Right, so that's tackling the hearing side, which clearly helps with the social side too. But what about tackling loneliness more directly, beyond just fixing the hearing?
Recent research points to some very specific, effective strategies, things that go beyond just vague advice like get out more. That systematic review and meta-analysis on loneliness interventions by Shakal and colleagues published January 2024. That's incredibly useful here. They crunched the numbers from dozens of rigorous studies to see what actually works to reduce that subjective feeling of loneliness. Okay, first, they found moderate certainty evidence for modest reductions through group-based treatment. Now, these aren't just casual get-togethers. They're often structured, psychologically informed sessions. Discussion-based, designed to foster deeper connection, empathy, understanding.
So more therapeutic in nature.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
Guided conversations in a supportive setting. People learn coping strategies, improve social skills, build genuine rapport. Second, also moderate certainty evidence for modest reductions through internet training, including social media. And this isn't just giving someone an iPad. It's actively teaching older adults how to use computers, navigate online safely, email, use social media, video chat apps like Zoom or FaceTime. This skill building is crucial. It fosters a sense of agency. It opens up totally new, accessible ways to connect family far away, friends, new online communities, all from home. And lastly, though the evidence was a bit weaker, low-certainty group exercises like Tai Chi or structured fitness programs showed very small reductions in loneliness. Just to clarify, moderate versus low certainty. Moderate means researchers are pretty confident. Good data, multiple studies, reasonably sure it works. Low certainty means the evidence is less solid. Fewer studies, maybe some limitations, there might be a small effect, but more research is needed to be really sure. It's about confidence in the results right now. And it's interesting why these interventions might work better. The review suggests group treatments work because they force interaction, active listening. You move beyond just being there to actually engaging. And the internet training, it fosters that agency, self-sufficiency, gives people the tools to proactively find and maintain connections on their own terms. It empowers them.
Makes sense. Control and connection.
Right. And beyond those core findings, our sources mention other promising approaches too. Social prescribing, used in the UK, where doctors actually prescribe joining a choir or a walking group. Integrating social connection right into healthcare. Intergenerational programs, bringing different age groups together, shown to cut loneliness by like 68%. Huge impact from bridging those gaps.
Yeah.
And just volunteering, giving your time and skills, that can lower dementia risk by 38%. Shows the power of purposeful social engagement. These are all practical, research-backed ways to fight back against loneliness.
And if we connect all this back to the bigger picture, protecting our brains is truly a multifaceted thing. It's holistic. It goes beyond tackling just one factor. Our sources, like the Mayo Clinic, give excellent broad lifestyle advice. This is the foundation for overall cognitive health. First, physical activity, absolutely paramount. The recommendation is at least 150 minutes a week of moderate aerobic activity like brisk walking or 75 minutes of vigorous activity. And even light exercise, as Science Daily notes, helps slow cognitive decline in people at risk for Alzheimer's. The mechanism, simple but powerful. More blood flow to the entire brain. Oxygen, nutrients, clearing out waste. It keeps the brain healthy. Second, mental activity, just as crucial. Your brain needs challenges to stay sharp, like muscles need exercise. Things like crossword puzzles, reading widely, learning an instrument, picking up a new hobby that requires active learning. It keeps the brain active, builds new connections, creates cognitive reserve, makes it more resilient. Third, as we've really highlighted today, social interaction. Vital for brain health. It actively fights off depression and stress, both big contributors to memory loss. Actively seeking connections, engaging in real conversation, shared activities. It's a powerful protector. Fourth, maybe less obvious, but organization. It helps indirectly. Reducing clutter, physical and mental, using planners, limiting distractions. It helps your brain focus when trying to encode information, makes recall more likely later.
Right. Less mental noise.
Exactly. Fifth, and often underestimated, is good sleep. Not getting enough quality sleep or having interrupted sleep, especially from things like sleep apnea, which really needs diagnosis and treatment, is directly linked to memory loss, impaired function, even higher dementia risk. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality, uninterrupted sleep. Lets the brain consolidate memories, clear out metabolic junk. Sixth, healthy diet. Fueling the brain properly. Rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein, limiting processed stuff, saturated fats, excess alcohol. Provides nutrients, antioxidants, healthy fats for optimal function and protection. And finally, tying right back into our deep dive, managing chronic health problems, non-negotiable for cognitive longevity. High blood pressure, diabetes, depression, obesity, and yes, hearing loss, all of these hit brain health hard if left unmanaged. Managing these underlying conditions is managing your overall health and, by extension, your brain health. And beyond those foundational guidelines, our sources like Unity Physio and Science Daily point to some more cutting-edge elements for a really robust cognitive protection plan. Things like using auditory training apps, maybe Hearing Coach, for even just 20 minutes a day. They exercise your brain's sound processing centers. Interestingly, bilingualism, speaking 2 or more languages, some studies show it might delay dementia onset by 4 to 5 years, highlights the power of cognitive flexibility.
Wow.
Yeah. And specific nutrients. A combo of omega-3s and vitamin B12 might help slow hearing-related cognitive decline, a nutritional support. And on the diagnostic front, exciting things like at-home smell tests are being developed for early Alzheimer's detection, since sense smell changes can sometimes happen early, and this advice can be tailored. Prevention isn't one-size-fits-all across a lifetime. For people ages 40 to 60, get annual hearing tests, even if you feel fine. Early detection is key. Limit noise exposure, keep it below 85 dB, like heavy traffic noise. And actively build good social habits during these years. For those 60 and older, things like group music therapy can boost speech processing by 20%, that combination of auditory and social stimulation. And as we said, volunteering lowers dementia risk significantly, provides purpose. These specific science-backed steps show there are many actionable things we can do at any age to proactively safeguard our cognitive health, our memories. So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? This deep dive has really shown just how profoundly linked our hearing, our social connections, and our brain health truly are. It's not just one thing affecting another in isolation. It's this dynamic axis where each part influences and amplifies the others, for better or for worse. But the main message here isn't fear. It's empowerment. This hearing loss, loneliness, memory connection. It represents one of the most preventable pathways to dementia and cognitive decline that we know of in modern medicine. We have the knowledge. Critically, we have the tools. We have actionable strategies to intervene. So we really encourage you to think about some concrete, immediate actions. Maybe it is time to consider a hearing check, especially if you've noticed little changes, or even just try one of those free hearing test apps online, just to get a baseline. Make a conscious plan this week. Connect with someone meaningful, in person, video call, even just a thoughtful message. Reach out, nurture those vital bonds, and maybe pick one new brain-stimulating skill to explore this month. A puzzle, a language app, learn a few guitar chords, dive into a totally new book topic. Small, consistent steps add up. They offer significant protection for your brain over time. Your memories are absolutely worth protecting, one conversation, one connection, one proactive step at a time.
And that leaves us with perhaps an important question for all of us to think about. In this world that's often noisy, saturated with information, and sometimes feels quite isolating, what does it truly mean to be well connected? Not just socially with other people, but connected in a way that safeguards the very future of our memories, our cognitive well-being. It really calls for deliberate action, doesn't it? Intentional living.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening. For all things health and fitness, subscribe to our newsletter today. Find out more at armygymnastics.com.